Here you go.
I call the meeting to order, City of University Heights City Council meeting, Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. Welcome, everyone. Roll call, 4 council are present in person, and Dottie Maher is present on phone. Hi, Dottie. Hi, thank you. First order of business, approval of minutes, March 12th, March 14th special council meeting, and April 3rd special council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are all approved by unanimous consent. Okay, we're going to have public input. Anyone who'd like to speak to the council, okay, you want to go ahead, Mike? Come up to the microphone and state your name. Thank you.
Mike Ritchie, 20 Olive Court. I wanted to thank Nate for his time here in University Heights. I thought Nate just did a fabulous job here as police chief, and I wish him the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I invited Tom Van Buer, the county assessor.
We have another.
And I know, but I mean, and he's going to speak during public input. This is still public input. And I asked him to speak during public input because University Heights got a mailing last week from the county assessor about their assessments. And I asked Tom if he'd speak to them. Thank you, Tom, for coming.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So my name's Tom Van Buer. I'm the county assessor. And like Louise said, she contacted me yesterday and wanted some information and said if I was available, I could stop by and I might be able to explain it better than her. I don't.
Okay, we're going to pass him the phone.
Okay. So basically, our job is to keep properties at market value. According to state law, we're supposed to be at a 95 to 105% sales ratio. So what that means is the state looks at every sale that happens in Johnson County, and they compare the assessed value to the sales price.
Just put it up close to you.
All right. So what they do is they compare the sales price to the assessed value. And for Johnson County for 2018, we had approximately 1,400 sales. And when they compared those two, our sales ratio for the county was 91.2%, which basically means we were valuing property below what it was selling for at about 9% short of what sales prices were. So if our office doesn't do anything, what the state is going to do is say, because you're 9% low, we're going to add 9% to every residential property in the county. It's called equalization. They do that every odd year. We don't feel that's a fair way to approach it. So what we do is we look at each individual neighborhood throughout the county. There's 500 neighborhoods probably in the county. And we look at each one and change each one individually. University Heights has 10 neighborhoods. So if you looked at just there's 52 sales in University Heights. The sales ratio for University Heights alone was 86.5. So we needed to make adjustments so that we would be within the tolerance of 95 to 105%. So the values, after we changed the values, we ended up with a ratio of 98.7. The average increase in University Heights was 7%. Some were certainly more than that, some were less than that, but that was the average. So that's basically what we did and why we did it.
Are there any questions from council for Tom?
I just want to thank the University Heights assessor, who is always available to answer my questions regarding our community's tax assessments. And I think her boss should know what a great job she's been doing and how accommodating your staff has been in all questions that I've raised.
Thank you. That's always good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can hand the phone back to. Thank you very much, Tom, for coming tonight.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to speak? Hi.
Hi. I'm Karen Franklin, 1 University Way, right over there. Okay, very good. I'm here tonight because I'm on the Complete Count Committee for the census, and we would like to make sure that University Heights is engaged in that effort. So right now, we're at the formative stage. So what I'm here for is basically to ask that you do be part of it. And if you can assign someone to be a liaison or connection with us. It wouldn't necessarily mean that you'd have to go to all the meetings. We meet once a month right now. But we would like to make sure that we have this connection with University Heights so that the count
I think
happens
that's great,
here. Yeah.
Karen, and welcome to the community.
Well, thank you.
And does anyone want to volunteer to do that job, or should we talk about it? And
That,
What is the relationship with whom? I couldn't hear that.
okay. I am with, it's called the Iowa City Area Regional Complete Count Committee, and it's about the 2020 census, and it is to ensure that everybody is counted. And so we're engaging the local governments as well as a variety of organizations. Okay?
I'd be happy to do it.
oh, okay, Sylvia.
Okay, Sylvia?
I like numbers, and my husband used to work for the census, so he cares very
Perfect.
much about it.
Perfect.
Thank you, Karen, for coming. Would anyone else like to speak to the council tonight? Okay. We'll go on to streets and sidewalks. And Josiah, do you want us to go ahead and start? You had many reports sent to the council in the last few days. And
Okay. Can you hear me, Daddy?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Just go down. Let me just go down in order of the resolutions there on the agenda. So we have an agenda. We have 2 agenda items, obviously, as I explained. So we took bids for all of court improvements. I submitted the bid tabulation and a letter of recommendation explaining the bids and the alternate bids and what they mean, and our recommendation. Our recommendation is actually to reject the bids because we got one bidder, and the cost of the bid was so much over the bid estimate. So we have 1911, which is a resolution if the council chooses to accept the bid, which they certainly can do, and 1912 is to reject the bids. Why don't you tell me, Mayor, what you'd like me to review
Discussion.
of those letters and documents? Do you guys
well,
want to
I'd
go
like
through
you
them?
to talk about the bid and why you're rejecting,
through the
why you're
amounts.
recommending to reject it.
Sure. So like I said, we received one bid. The low bid, or the only bid, was from All American Concrete. Their bid for the base bid work was $545,160. The cost opinion, or the engineer's estimate for the work, was $426,500 approximately. So they were a little over $118,000 over, which is about 28% over the estimate. There were also 3 bid alternates on the project, A, B, and C. A was for additional water main work on the south end of the street for the city of Iowa City, because they would be paying for that work. Bid alternate B was a cost for trenchless water main installation, which is boring underground versus your standard digging a trench. And bid alternate C was for the cost of sod to restore areas instead of seed. So B and C were sort of for the city's knowledge about the bid prices and an opportunity to compare them and see if they were reasonable, and they might want to pursue a different method. As I noted in my correspondence, the city of Iowa City responded they are not going to accept bid alternate A. for the additional water main work. So what that means is that if you reject the bids and rebid it later, we'll rebid that bid alternate work A at that time. If you decide to accept the bid and proceed with the project, they're saying we're not going to be involved in that additional work. Bid alternate B for the trenchless was about $34,000 more than your standard water main installation. My recommendation is you do not accept that. It's way more expensive than the potential benefit would be of like less disruption, digging up in time. And then there's about an additional $5,000 to the project to do sodding instead of seeding on the project. And so I don't really have a recommendation there. I think the sodding number, it is higher than we would typically see, maybe $15 a square, which is 100 square feet. So it's about 1,200 higher than we typically see, but it's sort of a judgment if you think that's beneficial to the project and you accommodate paying that, then you could accept the sodding alternate.
Could you explain why there was only one bid?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what I found out.
Yeah.
I talked to a number of contractors the week before the bid. We had a good bidder list. We had 10 contractors on the bid list. A number of them were planning to bid, but I talked to some of them the morning of and the days after, and they basically said we've got like 15 or 20 projects that all came out for bid then the week before and this week and next week. And so some of them won those projects and they were full. Some of them they were sorting through, 5, 6, 7 bids and needed to pick one. So this is a project they dropped. So basically, a number of contractors said on the day of the bid, we were going to quote the project, but a bunch of the contractors we had talked to before on that day said, hey, by the way, we're dropping out. So they were kind of left scrambling, but there was one contractor who had a bid. And that's what we found out about what happened on the last couple of weeks. So my recommendation to reject the bids is just based solely on not just that there's one bidder, because you could get one bid and it could be a good bid and a good contractor. I do want to note that the contractor who submitted the bid, All-American, our recommendation to reject the bids has nothing to do with what we think of All-American. They've worked around here a long time, and we think they are a good contractor. But the prices they got from them and their subs is so much higher than the estimate. So the next piece would be, well, is the estimate wrong? And we think the estimate's fairly accurate. We've sort of been going through projects. Every project, we look back the last 6 months and see where things have bid. So we feel like the estimate's pretty accurate, and especially compared to projects we've seen in the area and other cities the last 6 months. So the recommendation, I think if you rebid it, you'll get more interest and better bids and much better prices.
Now, Josiah, the bid came about 30% higher than estimated, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and part of your recommendation is that we roll this project into 2020. Is that also at about the same time that we would be making improvements to the Melrose landscape or the landscape?
Streetscape?
I can't.
The question was if we rebid the project for construction in 2020, would that coincide with the Melrose streetscape construction? And the answer there is no. I believe
2023.
2023 is when that one is
2023.
pegged for the funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So in the interim, were you suggesting that Russ just fill some of those potholes as inexpensively as we can, just to tide us over till next year?
Correct. Yep. That was in my report too. I've talked to Russ. I know he's got availability this week to do as much as he can on Olive Court and patch the potholes and get it to a reasonable condition.
Without really, expending very much money. As
Well-
long as we're going to be doing it the correct way next year.
Yeah.
You know, I
What-
don't want to throw.
I would say whatever Russ needs for materials and time to get it done, it is appropriate.
Okay.
Council, 1911 is before you, and so is 1912. Do you want to,
I'd like to make a motion. I'd make it's a Part A and a Part B motion. I'll motion that council withdraw from consideration Resolution 1911 and that it take up for consideration 1912. Is there a second?
Possible, or do we have to vote on this?
Just don't move it if you don't want
yeah,
it.
let's just ignore that 1911 and choose 1912. You can choose either one. Would you make
Sure.
a motion for
I'll make
1912?
1912.
Yeah, second.
Okay, a motion by Sylvia and second by Nick. Discussion, and this is for 1912. Rejecting bids received on April 4th, 2019 for the 2019 Olive Court Improvements Project. Motion and second. Discussion. Roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Moore? Aye. Maher?
Is the motion to reject?
Correct.
Couldn't hear the motion.
That's correct. The motion is
Okay.
to reject the bids.
Okay, I concur.
Herbold?
Aye.
Casada?
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, then we go down. We don't have to do 1913. 1914 is an easement. No, we don't have that. What do we have next, Josiah?
Well,
Can I ask if there's anything else that we need to be doing this year? Because this project has already gotten put off so long. This is just really bad news. I understand that we will be repairing some potholes, but there's like pretty significant washaways on the side of the road that maybe needs to be filled in and reseeded. We've got trees that really needed to be taken down this year as a part of this project. Like, I'm worried that I don't know. I mean, what if we were to reimagine this whole thing and just re-asphalt it and do this project a completely different way? Forget, a lot of the infrastructure that we had imagined for this and just fix the street.
Well, that's discussion for council.
Okay.
Dottie,
Is there any interest in trying to pursue a scaled back version of this, or do we want to just put it off for next year?
Well, I would say that even if let's say you had a scaled back version, you're not going to bid it next week.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still going to involve utility work. It's still going to involve a number of things. So I think the same issue with the timing of waiting till next year.
Okay.
I think it still applies. I mean, even if that was all the intention.
Do you want to make a recommendation for removal of any trees this year, or?
We should probably take a close look at that because we've been kind of ignoring it. So yeah, I think we need to evaluate the condition of the trees this summer and go ahead and probably get the dangerous ones taken down because we've been waiting on that for years now.
I'd be glad to
Okay.
coordinate anything
And
with
then
that.
can you look at the edges and getting them filled in where there are spots where, the streets
the
got these big
the tire
ruts.
ruts?
Yeah.
We can.
Okay.
How expensive is that?
I'll have to talk to Russ. He's done it before.
Oh,
Usually-
Russ could do that.
He usually
type of
gets some
thing.
rock and gets them filled in. So
Russ
Didn't
could
work
do
that well on Kozer.
yeah, I mean it's not.
If Pella were to do that, how much would it be? Could you get us a Pella quote on that?
To do what?
To
The-
do what didn't work well on Kozer? And I'm just going on the assumption that better equipment is probably the difference. Because that was the difference.
I don't know the answer
where-
100%, but the issue is that like on Kosher and the same thing with Olive, there's no curb.
Right.
So there's nothing to like hold anything in.
That's right.
So even if you come in with a big contractor with a bunch of equipment, they can put different material in there and compact it, but it doesn't have anything to hold it in, so to
Okay.
speak.
Then
So
it
as people
doesn't
keep
seem-
driving on it,
Yeah, that's what's
It will
football
continue,
game day.
so.
That's why it's on the agenda tonight. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're going to bring that back in a future council meeting? You and Josiah?
Yeah, I'll,
Plan?
sure.
Okay. And council can consider that then?
So
I'm sorry.
19, Resolution 1913 and 1914 is for temporary construction easements for this project. So
Withdraw.
I had them on here. If they can still move forward, I would go ahead with them. As I noted in my report, there's a term associated with those easements, and that term is basically 1 year from the date the construction starts. So if they're approved and still applicable, we're still going to need them.
I'd move for consideration of 1913, Resolution 1913.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Nick, second by Sylvia. And could you say in the phone to Dottie what it is? Because she can't seem to hear me.
Doug, we've had a first and second for Resolution 1913. This is to authorize the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest the temporary construction easement for the Olive Court project with Betty Mika,
Okay.
and we're in discussion.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Moore. Aye. Maher.
Well, would you like to vote for
She already
or
did.
against? Oh,
I think she said aye.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I heard aye.
Well,
Herbold.
Aye.
whatever.
Casada.
Aye.
Josiah thinks
Miller.
is appropriate.
Carried.
Move for consideration of resolution number 1914.
Okay, motion by Nick, second. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Virginia. Discussion, this is, maybe you can
Dottie,
explain.
this is the next resolution, 1914. It's the temporary construction easement on the other side of the street with Hotel 901 LLC for the Olive Court construction.
Any further discussion?
I have some questions. If this is a year later, a temporary construction easement for a year later, how is this going to impact the hotel? And I'd like to hear from Jim before I make an educated vote on this, please. Because right now we're assuming it's dirt at the hotel site. And I just want to make sure how would any of this easement, construction, placement impact the operating hotel?
Do you think it would, Josiah? I mean, as the engineer, do you think it does?
So-
It wouldn't impact you at all? Can you come up here, Jim? I don't know what he said. What did he say?
That it wouldn't impact them.
It wouldn't impact him.
Okay. That being the case, I'm ready to vote.
Is any other further discussion?
So
Oh,
there's no-
Mike's raising his hand.
Jim.
My question is on this thing, like on easement to like Betty's place and stuff, what kind of easement is this? Is it, are you
Construction
gonna be,
material.
equipment gonna be tearing up the yard, replacing it? Because, you know, I'm sure you guys talked with Betty about this, but does Betty realize that this could impact her football parking?
Dottie, we have a question about whether Betty and others have recognized that the temporary construction easement will impact their parking for football games. And yes, I mean that I've met with Betty probably 3 times, and that was our main thing we talked about, was explaining where the temporary easement is and how many parking spots it would impact. So that was her biggest concern, and she understands that it's directly on the corner of the lot where she parks cars, and that it will impact her in some way.
terms of traffic, and what do the police say about it then? Is it going to interfere with
No.
traffic, or is it mostly you're concerned about parking, or what?
Dottie was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on whether this temporary construction easement would impact your project.
Hi, Dottie. This is Jim Glasgow.
Yeah.
The temporary construction easement might impact us slightly, but whatever it is, we'll deal with it. So
Okay.
it's not a problem either this year, next year, whenever it happens. We're on board.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Maher.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Casada.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Carried.
Josiah, did you have, I think you had a few other items.
Yeah, a few other items on the monthly report. Street sweeping is scheduled to start next week.
Great. It's supposed to snow on Sunday.
We'll get that last sand
Yeah.
application. And the Sun Street bus shelter is installed by the city of Iowa City.
Yay! 2 years later, yay!
And it looks pretty nice.
Yes, it does.
I'd like to ask if that tree could be pruned a little extra because it's blocking the solar panel.
Yeah,
So-
I'm going to follow up with Grandview Court
Okay.
about that.
All right, super. Thank you.
About what now?
I'm going to follow up with Grandview Court. There's a tree there by the bus shelter that they installed,
Oh,
and trimming up a couple branches
yeah,
that are near it.
yeah.
Any other questions for Josiah? Okay. Thank you, Josiah.
As far as streets and sidewalks are concerned, can I make a point here? Because I don't know if Josiah will be there for the whole meeting.
Make a point, Dottie.
Okay, well, Herbold had proposed a resolution dealing with signage, and as long as that's a streets and sidewalks issue, I think it's something that I need to deal with Josiah and with the new police chief if there's an issue there. I don't believe it's so much a part of Herbold's, bailiwick as it is more the streets and sidewalks issue. So I didn't know if Josiah was going to be there for the whole meeting, so I wanted to make that point.
Okay. Dottie, we talked earlier, and we talked about sending olive court letters, residents' letters about...
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I really think that's important
And so,
to inform the community what's going on.
right. And so, do you want me to work with Josiah on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and well, let me work with you too.
Okay.
All three of us. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We'll follow up with that so that every resident on Olive Court is aware. And of
Yeah.
course, Jeff Hendrickson.
You're right,
and
because it's
others.
important.
Yes.
Because they were planning on it, and I think we need to be sure to inform them
Right.
because it was a money issue, and they should be able to understand that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go on to Mayor's report, and Jim Glasgow and Greg Stiltner, the developers of the hotel, are here tonight, and they're going to give an update. Who wants to give the update? Thanks for coming. Oh, we're going to hand you the phone.
Oh.
Could you come up and get it? Thank you.
Dottie, can you hear me all right?
Tilt it more to you.
What now?
The
Oh,
bottom.
Dottie, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. Yeah, Greg just pulled me off the job site where it's just starting to rain, so we were trying to get as much done as we could today. We're actually working at the north and south ends right now. We're putting the stairs in at the south end, and at the north end, we're starting to compact the storm sewers and bring the compacted fill up to grade so that we can put the expanded road into the hotel. And one thing that Josiah brought up, I didn't realize this, but if the city of Iowa City is doing some work on the south water main of Olive Court, I'm working with them to the east of that on that same water main because we've got some substantial erosion there. So I don't know if those two are connected somehow, but I've already had the city out there to look because we were planning on digging up a fairly large section of their water main. So I'll see if that's somehow has something to do with what they're doing, because it's only half a block away. So maybe that the A section of that water main will go away if we take care of what we're working on. We don't really know what's going on. It seems like there's something is leaking there. So, and it's impacting our 30-unit building down below. So, other than that, we're cleaning the site right now and getting everything graded and ready to dig foundation. So, I don't know if Greg has anything to say, but that's my update on the construction end of it.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Greg, did you want to speak?
Just add that the Schrader's going to finish up the storm sewer next week.
Okay, very good.
Johnny, I owe you a call.
Okay, thank you. You might want to stay around for a few minutes. Oh, hi, Dottie.
Yeah, I just want to know how the restaurant is coming along. Have they, solidified that contract, or where are they on that?
Greg's going to talk about it. Greg Steltner here.
Dottie. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can.
Peter Harmon, Gray's Restaurant, he is putting his preliminary design together right now. I hope to see that in the next week or two here. We had some final discussions with our architect and him, and back and forth, and if how much space he needed, how much space he wanted, how he was going to set it up. He's got a lot of different designs. He's excited about, he wants to put trees inside the restaurant. So I don't know so we had to work with the design team on the structure of the building to kind of do that. So we've been just in some discussion with that. So, at this point, I should have a design here within the next couple of weeks for him to kind of show us but he's working on it diligently. So,
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for coming. Any other questions about the hotel? Okay, we'll go on to consideration of resolution number 1915, accepting the resignation of University Heights Police Chief Nate Peterson, effective April 12, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Nick, second by Sylvia. Discussion.
Well, I just wanted to take some time to thank Chief Peterson. Do you want me to take? For stepping up and doing a great job over his term. Some of the highlights that I wanted to note, developing a strong relationship between UHPD and the NAACP, locally and at the state level. His close relationship with them really helped with the implicit bias ordinance. There's the Caltech agreement, which I think was an efficient way for us to catch up on deferred technology. Great relationships with other agencies in the county. My understanding is that rather than them maybe leaving us off some calls that we might be able to help, UHPD officers were able to assist. And I think there's a sense of just professionalism, with the UHPD that has really increased since Chief Peterson took over. We've heard a lot about pay, and that's been an issue for the UHPD. But I think Chief Peterson did a good job, not only just saying, hey, we should pay our officers a little bit more, but really benchmarking it in relation to other agencies, other police departments that are similarly situated. I think that's been a great asset. That, along with Caltech, I think has allowed us, especially during this transition time, to be able to have a lot of interest from other people, from officers coming in. We have the speed trailer that, there was a little bit of debate about that, but that ended up being, I think, pretty popular with residents. We've had it in various places around the community, and we had a little bit of a delay with the snow piling up, so it was out of commission for a while, but I think that's been a really good thing. Chief Peterson also oversaw the updating of the RMS, the record management system, that really allowed us to be integrated with surrounding agencies. And last but not least, I think, my sense is that UHPD has been just a good place for officers to work, and it's been, I think, good for the council, for the community, just having his leadership and, having officers who just appeared to be enjoying their jobs, feeling secure in their jobs. And I know with the resolution recently, we had some issues with that, but otherwise, I just think that Chief Peterson did a great job, and I wish you the best of luck with your transition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a little break for 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to have some cake and some beverages, and then we'll.
Should we vote?
What?
Do we?
Vote.
Oh, we didn't
just
have
go-
a vote.
Yeah,
Did
it's
we?
just if there's no more discussion.
Is there any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Herbold,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, Nate, we'll celebrate here a little bit with some
Right.
cake. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to call you back?
Okay, we're back to the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Consideration of resolution number 1916, authorizing the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest an employment agreement with Troy A. Kelsey to serve as chief of police for the city of University Heights.
I motion adoption.
Motion by Sylvia,
Second.
second by Nick. Is there discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Casada,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
carried.
Very good. Congratulations.
Go to the second
Troy.
piece of cake.
Now we go to the legal report, and first of all, we have Verizon representatives here, and they're sitting in the front row. And so you want to come up and speak to the council?
Sure. Good evening, council and mayor. My name will.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody knows Dottie.
My name is Jeff. I'm with Verizon, and we have Sarah here. Sarah Muley is also with Verizon, and my counterpart, Jess DeWalt from Verizon.
Okay.
So we're excited to be here tonight, and as you guys know, or have any friends that have Verizon or Verizon yourself, we have a need to address some of the coverage gaps and also capacity issues. One of the nice new ways to do that is we have technology called small cells. And what this is, as you'll see in a minute, Sarah will kind of walk through a basic small cells 101, but it'll allow us to provide for that need in University Heights with a less obtrusive option than, say, a larger tower. So we've worked with Steve. You guys have initially enacted an ordinance that amended kind of your large tower ordinance. And since that time, I think that was in 2017, since that time, the landscape has changed with the Iowa Siting Act and also the FCC order that provides some guidance for cities and carriers to work together to allow for this deployment of the small cell technology. So in doing so, Verizon has placed an emphasis on bringing Verizon employees to your city to meet that need that you guys have, recognizing that these small cells are actually in your streetscape. And we need to work with the city in your streets to be able to provide that cell phone service need for your citizens, which is also our customers. And in doing so, working with Steve on the ordinance, we realize it's on second reading. We've been working with him on some possible amendments to make the ordinance better for ordinance purposes as far as complying with the FCC order and whatnot. We look forward to continuing that discussion with Steve between now and the third reading. And I don't know if you guys have seen some of our back and forth in comments, but Steve has been great to work with in that regard to implement those changes for your consideration on third reading. So with that, Sarah, if you want to.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so Jeff and I are based out of
Oh, yeah.
Omaha, and in general, we cover a 3-state territory. Jess is based out of Chicago, but we kind of overlap. We're in the Venn diagram, if you will, between Omaha and Chicago.
Wow.
But our job, is two-prong. One, to, be here grassroots level so that we can really collaborate with you guys on a proactive basis, because it does take a while for, for our team that actually, goes to work on these things to take an ordinance or an agreement where they see that they can deploy under that to actually put pen to paper and reserve capital funds to make that investment in any community. So we are here on an effort to work with communities one-on-one and to understand the nuances that every community needs. Every community has different preferences, different permitting processes, and our job is to really be that liaison between the community and Verizon at large. So if you guys ever come into any snags where you can't penetrate talking to whoever runs our construction or permitting, so on and so forth down the road, we want to let you know that we are definitely here and you can reach out to us at any time. On that note, the second prong is also, just being a support arm on an educational basis. So, this is a new technology. We sometimes hear fear of the unknown concerns. And so when and if you guys get to the point where you're fielding any questions or anything comes to the forefront, we want to let you know that we're here to help in any way we can. Sometimes that's one-on-one presentations such as this today. Sometimes it takes other forms. So.
Just to add on that before we get into the presentation, the nice thing, or I guess the exciting thing about University Heights is, as you guys have seen from some of the materials presented to the city in the last few months, we already have some designated sites that we would like to look at and some build plans in motion. So it's not just something that may happen. We're committed to an aspect of if we can work on this ordinance with you guys to allow us to deploy, we have solutions to your coverage and capacity needs. So that's kind of maybe different from some other cities to go into where we're going in ahead of time. We are actually seriously looking at deploying some of those strategies for your town and specifically for University Heights. So with that, if you want to go into...
Yeah, I will. And can I orally just kind of direct you onward here? All right, next slide, please. So we're going to show you video, but we have a limited audio capabilities, so we're going to charge right forward here.
Well, I'm going to try.
Okay.
It's very peppy, so it'll wake us all up.
Yeah.
This isn't the strongest of computers, so maybe not.
And that's fine. We can kind of speak to what's in the presentation here.
Right, and you'd have to click that link for it to go.
Yeah, that blue link in the middle there.
Is it on presentational information? I'm having problems with
All
the
right,
sound.
let's just move on to the next slide. It's
Yep.
fine. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're fine. All right, so this is just kind of an overall visual, again, to kind of give you the big picture idea here. And it is very big picture, but as Jeff was alluding to earlier, we're never going to do away with those traditional towers on the hill. They will always be there to provide that blanket level coverage. Where you see the need for small cells across the nation is when you're actually talking about that increase in data usage. Anybody that has looked at a modern cell phone bill plan can recognize the fact that more and more homes are becoming wireless. In the last 20 years, I think 13% of households were wireless only. And now today, you compare that nationally, we're at about 60%. Also, when you're talking about data increases that are projected in the near future, in the next 3 years, you're looking at a 5-fold increase. And in the next 5 years, you're looking at a 7-fold increase. So the basic, easiest way to wrap your head around that is that's a lot of people downloading, tweeting, streaming, doing everything at those peak times of day in highly densely populated areas. So, for here, you can think of any activity that would, be around a Saturday afternoon in fall, for instance. So next slide, please.
Or even a council meeting where you have one bar of service and you need to call Dottie.
And next slide, sorry. Thank you. So you guys might have heard on the news that Verizon just recently announced that 5G was rolling out in limited areas of downtown Minneapolis and downtown Chicago, as well in the Mall of America areas of Bloomington, Minnesota. We're really excited about that. Verizon's proud of being a leader in the industry. And we just wanted to show you some real examples of small cells on streetscapes in the Midwest so that you can kind of play the game of spot the small cell, if you will. But what you'll see as we go through these photos is that regardless of what type of pole or infrastructure there is, Verizon always implements coding and blending techniques to blend in with the existing streetscape. There's never any height issues where it would impede on pedestrian traffic. And there's never any, ground equipment that would encumber anybody's ability to walk along the sidewalk. So at the top here, you can see the panel design, and that's where a Verizon antenna and the equipment is actually affixed to the existing pole. Next slide, please. Here's another example. Here's another example right outside of US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. Again, you'll see the small cells affixed to the pole in the center. Again, at the top, it's the same design as we saw earlier. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a different design. We call it a cantenna design. It is on the right side. If you can kind of see it, the industry term is, we call it lollipopped on the top there. And again, that's just a preference that community happened to desire. So you can see same sort of techniques where it's color blending, color matching. Next slide, please. These are deployments in downtown Omaha. Again, this is the panel design that we saw in the first set of slides in downtown Minneapolis. These are just examples of different colored poles for you to get a variance of what they can look like. Next slide, please. And we have some traditional poles here. Next slide, please. And again, next slide, please.
And then just to, sorry, I just
Go
wanted
for
to
it.
interject real quick. So we work with your pole manufacturers. So whatever, just because these are the poles you're seeing in the photos here, those are their pole designs that they wanted us to match. So these wouldn't be the poles you guys would have. You guys would have your poles with our stuff on it. Just
And
kind of.
in the present plan, you've got an arrangement with Mid-American Energy. So when you say your poles, they're really Mid-American Energy's poles in terms of your current deployment.
And the agreement would allow the city and Verizon to work together.
Right.
For those attachments and also for any city right-of-way usage for our own structures or for attachments if the city in, say, 5 years does a streetscape and puts in the city's city-owned poles. That agreement would, or the ordinance would speak to that in this case.
Right. And this is just an example of poles that were a solution in a pretty fancy area of Omaha. So again, this was a non-invasive solution in that residential area. Next slide, please. And then you have what's called an armed cantenna visual. This kind of varies from that St. Paul visual that we saw lollipopped on that second slide. And in here, you kind of have an arm that goes out with that cylindrical antenna just sitting out to the side.
And that's often done because the city needs access to the top of their pole for their lighting. So that's just the city's desire to have it armed off.
Right. Next slide, please. And then we often sometimes run into situations where wood poles in the siting selection process are what is in the landscape. And we also have solutions. Typically, the equipment kind of blends into the sky to be as minimally invasive as possible. Next slide, please. And then we get recurring questions about what it would look like if and when Verizon would have to drop its own pole in a right-of-way. It imitates the structure, as you see, of a light pole, so as to be as minimally invasive as possible. The equipment sits at the top, and you can see everything that is on the ground is flush to the ground, again, not encumbering any pedestrian traffic. So.
Sarah, is that an example of a structure other than the small cell equipment? So Jeff mentioned structures. So my question is this an example of a structure?
A carrier-owned structure in the right-of-way of the city. And that would be a situation where you guys have a big coverage gap or a capacity gap that you don't have a light pole in that area. So that's where we would work with the city to put in our own pole. Or since they have to have electricity anyway, if the city wants a light there, we'll work with the city to put in a light pole.
And I also can attest to the value and the forethought that Verizon has put into the development over the past 20 years, because I was on the County Board of Adjustment and we were approving poles, when the law made it mandatory. And Verizon had the best coverage in the Midwest initially, and it was a real leader in the field in the Midwest. So I think, I would attest to the fact that, your work is premier. So I have no doubts at all that we would be very happy and pleased with your suggestions and work product.
Well, thank you. We're proud to hear you say that. And with that, next slide, that concludes our presentation. We'd like to open it up. If you guys have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer away.
You referenced a little bit if we had a streetscape project and, you needed to change where, how you're mounting it. Does that, do you have experience with conflicts with cities when they're changing that around? Are you pretty accommodating? I just want to make sure I understand how accommodating you would be.
So a part of coming, here today and starting this relationship is to really be able to understand not only what your plans are today, but what your, capital improvements are projected in the next 1 to 5 years. Because, my background is I used to work in the licensing department of Union Pacific Railroad. So I was kind of on the right-of-way management side of things. So I understand conflict of work, and that's something that Verizon appreciates, and to have a successful partnership. That's something that we definitely try to work with and coordinate with to the best of our abilities. Inherently, maybe capital fundings and schedulings don't always perfectly align, but we use the best efforts to make them align as best we can. And part of the process that we would do when we would work with a city is to kind of originate a playbook so that we can understand those foreseeable things down the road and coordinate with cities to the best of our ability.
And in the event that something unforeseen does come up, that's where we would look at a temporary solution, and then if that exact site didn't work, because say you put a bump out or some type of a berm or flower pot or whatever, then we would work with the city for the next available or alternative location.
But so if we had a transition like that, you're not looking at the city covering costs because they're changing things around. You would just try to accommodate by having a temporary solution until a long-term solution could be found.
Like a replacement pole or something. We understand, in Chicago, we have a lot of lane widening projects. So we like to work with, cities and municipalities around Chicago to kind of figure out what their lane projects are going to be in case, we're looking at a pole that in 6 months isn't going to be a pole anymore.
Right.
Just to kind of work down the pike ahead.
And as far as the poles go, we're either affixing to an existing pole or we're matching and recreating your pole because there is different structural needs for the equipment to be on there safely. And that's where we have structural engineers to do that. And in many cases, we would sometimes, in many cases where there need to be a pole replacement because it isn't strong enough, we would manufacture the pole ourselves and pay for it through a third-party company, and then increase the foundation load and put a new pole there for the city, and then work with the city on rates and fees for that pole. So the city gets that added infrastructure of a new pole, in addition to all the possible smart city solutions.
But then you would rent out that structure to the city? Is that what you're saying?
No, we give it back to the city. We would put in the pole, give it to the city, and then we would pay for access.
We don't have full-time staff. We just want to let you know.
Oh, yeah.
We're we don't have full-time staff except the chief of the police department. So we'd like for you to have all the poles.
Well, and like Steve said, a lot of these poles may be on mid-amp poles, utility poles.
But in the future, right?
But in the future, we would. And if we put our own pole in, and it's not a city light pole, then that would be our own proprietary pole. So we would maintain that.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One of them is, what other cities in Linn County are you working with?
Well, we have, different needs in every area. So our, Sarah's and I's focus is the entire state.
Are you working with Marion?
We have worked with Marion. We've worked all around the entire region. So it would really maybe be easier to say where we haven't tried to develop a relationship. Same with, Jess and her region. We really, we get a lot of windshield time getting face-to-face with cities.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. The first one is around security. I'm sure you have heard Huawei and ZTE are two Chinese telecommunication manufacturers. So they're the ones who create the widgets for this, and they're banned right now under federal FCC rules and the Trump administration from participating in any U.S. security projects. My question to you is, since this is coming into a residential area, where's your equipment coming from and how secure is it?
Sure. And we use a lot of different vendors that are approved by the FCC. So that would all be regulated by the FCC. And we would have to comply with that. And right now, they're restricting that. We can't speak to what exactly the equipment would be because that's part of the permitting process. And the needs may change, the equipment may change. It may be a whole different design by the time we permit it. So I can't tell you tonight exactly what they are, but we would definitely follow the FCC guidance on that.
Right. And right now, Jeff, there is no protection for residents. None of us that I'm aware of work for military defense projects that are classified as national security. So the risk is all about eavesdropping, espionage on. We do have a number of very well-known entrepreneurs in our community, and they've gone international, and I'm worried about trade secrets that may get discussed over cell phone lines.
And that's always a concern with anything communications, and especially for Verizon as a leader in the industry and the biggest cell phone company in the country. That may be Dottie.
That's Dottie.
Yeah, I think
She must have.
Yeah.
Dropped.
I hung up on her though, because she.
Right. So, Jeff, I'm just looking for assurance that despite what the FCC is saying, that's Ajit Pai, Chairman Ajit Pai. I'd like to know, for our own safety as a community, what special efforts Verizon can make.
Right.
Since this is a very desirable market to be in.
Right.
I'd like assurances on that.
Well, I think as we put out.
Or more disclosure as we get closer to implementing.
Yep, and as we put out in a press release, I believe about a week ago, Verizon is outlining those security measures, and we can certainly get you that release of those measures if Verizon's taken seriously. Not only from, the entire spectrum, from robocalls all the way up to the 5G equipment.
Right.
So being that leader also means we have a responsibility to that security and to the safety of our customers.
Right.
Because that's our livelihood too, is our reputation.
Right.
So that's something definitely we can give you the press release of outlining our security measures, and those will only increase in the future as that equipment gets tightened down for release in the different markets.
Right. And just so you know, I'll be looking for disclosures on, where, as we get closer to implementing any requests from Verizon,
And
I'll be very interested in the details on the equipment, because the Chinese, Huawei and ZTE have been clearly identified as problematic actors for American interest and residents as well, I would argue.
All of our permits will provide pretty strong details as far as the equipment vendors on there, the equipment used, the radio equipment. The city, the city has to be careful a little bit because I know that's a concern of yours, but as far as the jurisdiction of the city, that's a concern of the city, but it's also the jurisdiction of the FCC at that level. So it gets a little difficult for a city to take that burden on themselves to regulate that because it creates a jurisdictional issue with the FCC. So we'll definitely try and meet all the security concerns that you have, and definitely for your citizens.
The second question comes from a resident who wants to know what the transmission power of this equipment is. I'm not too sure what he had in mind beyond this, but he's interested in transmission power distribution of this.
And obviously different equipment's different. And it will take 18 to 24 months to really get these up and running. And the 4G is different than the 5G. And I believe the 5G even has a lower transmission signal or RF emission. But at Verizon, we always comply well under the FCC regulations and the FCC limits. And that is the jurisdiction that we have to meet and handle for our license. So we are definitely complying well under those FCC limits. And I know it's a concern of the city, and we'll definitely work with the city.
That's a public, the way I understand it is public health.
It is, but with the FCC order, they preempted the cities.
I get that, but Jeff, I want to make this resident feel comfortable, and more importantly, because he also found information that the National Toxicology Program just issued a report in 2018 from the NIH. So we've got some interesting information. I just want disclosure around this issue, which is emissions.
Yeah, I had a question similar to that this morning in a meeting with local officials. And this is talking about small cell technology, and small meaning both in size and also both in power.
Right.
So it emits only about 700 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's small in terms of the footprint that it's emitting. That's why so we like to use the analogy. You guys haven't been exposed to this maybe, which is good for you. It's the Swiss cheese. So you know the macros cover like most of the cheese, and then small cells get plunked down to the areas of high demand. But it has to be an area of high demand because it really only emits 700 feet.
Right.
So that's one thing about the power of it. It's not very powerful. And in terms of what the emissions are, so I'm assuming we all have cell phones, or at least I have 2 cell phones. You know, I think we all have, we have 2 cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone.
Work and yours,
We're
yeah.
emitting more in this room just with our personal use than a single small cell would.
Okay.
Right.
So I'd appreciate some information on that for this particular resident who asked about it.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up
Okay,
with you.
perfect. And then I think that's it. I didn't have any other questions other than to tell you I used to work for Alliant, and I was the attorney who did pull attachments. So
Awesome.
I know a little bit about
Yeah,
conflict.
you are an expert.
All right.
And if Steve, if you could send us your email, because we have Steve's contact, and I'll
Sure.
give you our card, Sylvia, and maybe you want to just shoot us an email and we'll
Okay.
reply.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I'm glad that we have met the 3 of you so that we can contact you with future projects as they come along. Thank you for coming here.
Yeah, we'll be happy to be your resource for
Yeah, that's
small
great.
cells and really anything else Verizon. So
Okay, thank you.
you will have our cell phone numbers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so
Thank you,
we have second consideration of ordinance number 237,
Sarah.
amending ordinance number 215, regulating use of city property, including right-of-way. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Nick. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Sylvia. Discussion?
I have, go ahead.
Is this a first consideration or second consideration? Because there's a number of changes here, most of which exclude small cell from
The-
first draft that we approved last month.
No, the changes just show what the ordinance is doing to the existing ordinance.
Right.
Okay.
So the changes that you're seeing that are reflected.
Those are the same as.
Same as last
Okay.
month's.
Okay.
That's right.
I wanted to ask if we could defer voting until next month on the 2nd. I have asked Steve if I can see the trail of emails so that I can better understand the language that we're amending and why.
Yeah,
So there were no changes made, Steve, between last month and this month?
that's right.
But Virginia, we have to understand why the changes were made.
No, but he's saying there are no changes.
I know, I got that. Didn't know that there were emails that were underlying all of these changes. I want to see those emails.
So those emails don't underlie the changes that are before you. I got some requested changes last Friday. They aren't reflected in what's before you. I'm
They are
happy
not
to share
reflected?
them. They're not.
So, okay, so changes were requested, but those haven't made it to this draft.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore, Maher, Dottie. Did you say aye? Herbold,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Carrie.
Okay, Chris, we have your report. Thank you for, I know, I'll hold the
Hold
phone.
that for just a second.
Yeah.
So I sent out my usual, thank you. Sent out my usual clerk report, the updated rental permit spreadsheet. There were no additions to the building permit spreadsheet. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I did note that Stan is here tonight, and you gave your report, and I had a few questions that people had asked about where the state is on this. Could you speak to that a little bit? Thank you for coming, Stan. Dottie, you asked about this too. I'm going to maybe Stan can come up And Stan's going to talk about the update on the state and the rental.
Do you want me to give an update on the state's?
Yeah, where we are with the cap and where the State House.
Yeah, so it hasn't been put on the debate calendar yet, but there's 4 weeks left, so there's a lot that can happen. We in Iowa City, we anticipate it happening this year, that it will come before the full House, and there will be a vote this year.
Is it worth putting on our radar some of the ideas that we could implement if this does get reversed? Our ability to have the cap gets reversed.
Do you have ideas?
I was wondering if you had ideas.
They're taking away a big tool.
Yep.
So I think it's going to take some time to look through what is possible moving forward to make sure there's not any unintended consequences using some probably unproven and new innovative ways to achieve the same thing. I mean, they are going to take away two of the biggest tools that we have to regulate rental housing, with the change in occupancy that they took away from us last year, and then
was done.
The rental permit cap if they remove it completely this year. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but it's not. It's not good.
Well, Stan, in terms of our contract, for the tenants beginning July 1, are there any, sort of magic phrases or anything that we need to include? That's my concern, because I want to be within the scope of the law.
Sure. So Dottie was saying, is there anything that needs to be changed before July 1st? So there's the only thing that's up for change is the rental permit cap. So all the other changes that we made have not been found on the state's radar to be changed. So none of that changes.
What specifically?
Everything except the rental permit cap remains the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That really wouldn't affect, well, except the fact that the phrases about, the relationship with the parties.
That none of that changes. The only thing that changes is the rental permit cap.
Yeah, okay.
If it passes.
Okay, is she, I can't tell it.
She's still
I'm
on.
sorry. Thank you, Stan, for coming and addressing that. We'll go to Treasurer's Report, and Lori submitted 2 extra warrants this afternoon. Thanks. And so they were circulated. Are there any additions or corrections to any more payments? If not, the bills will be approved by unanimous consent. We'll go on to the chief's report, and he circulated that. I think it speaks for itself. And your last report, Nate.
Yeah, just thank you to everybody and the residents, the council. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, it was very nice.
I don't mean to make you work. Quick question though. I thought it was pretty impressive, the 4-minute response time that I saw in your report. Is that? I assume that's pretty typical. I know we don't have a long ways to go.
Yeah, that was. We had it narrowed down to a neighborhood or a section of a neighborhood, but it was difficult. I mean, Iowa City Fire was essentially driving up and down streets in that side of town, and we were divide and conquer kind of thing. So
that's pretty impressive.
But yeah, it was obviously there was still damage, but I think it was limited by the school noticing it and being able to find it quickly and get them inside and putting water on the fire sooner rather than later. So
yeah,
it's a good team effort.
Yeah, another benefit too of potentially having Iowa City instead of Coralville.
Absolutely.
Fire.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Station 2 was their 4 blocks away. So,
Yeah. Good deal. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Nick, did you want to go through some of your resolutions?
First, just consideration of resolution 1906. It's been around for a while. Been trying to attach ideas as I get them. I have, I think, pretty good feedback that this is something that people want. I don't know if not to actually follow to the last word, but at least to have some goals to keep meetings more efficient. We talked about it last meeting. That's where the 3-minute limitation came in. Someone had mentioned that. I think maybe Sylvia had mentioned that.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you
As a matter of
didn't?
fact, I'm going to raise a concern around that today.
Okay. So yeah, I guess I'm just open to hear feedback on that.
Number one, I just wanted to remind this council that we have been discussing effective meetings since the first quarter of 2018. This is not the first rodeo this concept is taking. We had something adopting Robert's Rules of Order, the consent agenda, and that was not further discussed. I think I see a hybrid of the consent agenda here, so good job on that, Nick. My concern is that I'm looking at this substantively. And the substance of it is that agenda items are now being shortened down to 10 minutes, which means that if you were to divvy up the time of 10 minutes, that's 2 minutes worth of deliberation and public discussion.
It's 15 minutes is the one that I had sent out.
I saw 10 minutes on the one that I saw. Oh, 15. Okay. So maybe it is 3 minutes. And one of the points I wanted to make is that the County Board of Supervisors, they have a limit of 5 minutes. And I would feel much more comfortable for 5 for the following reason. It neither encourages nor discourages that counselors take up discussion and deliberations outside of the public eye. I think the biggest losers by shortening up agenda item discussion is the public. They do not hear the rationale, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, as to what the issue was that their counselor or counselor was addressing. And so I'd like to see that we move away from restricting discussion, ample discussion, or short discussion at either one, it favoring a reasonable amount of 5 minutes per counselor. So that would be 25 minutes, 5 at most, and topped out.
Yeah, I don't really have a huge problem with the details of that. I just would like to have some, I mean, I want to hear from everybody else, but just some limit. And I think part of that though continues to be written reports. I'm a big fan of written reports because you can get some of that rationale out, and if we have the written reports along with people getting questions about their written report, to me that seems like a good combination to keep things efficient.
Mm-hmm. The other point I wanted to make, Nick, now that you're making, the efficient use of meetings, is where's the public and the agenda? I think the agenda doesn't even get posted well into the 24-hour period, and I think that's a disadvantage to the public. They are the other stakeholder in every city council meeting. It's council plus the public, and I don't remember seeing or reading about the agenda publication. And I'd like to see that we not just make this an effective meeting, but also a transparent meeting. And that means that agenda needs to be pushed out with ample time for the public. And this is probably the second council term where I've heard residents ask for the agenda ahead of time rather than within 24 hours of the meeting taking place, or even 48.
What's your
Then
suggestion?
Well, I think the issue is when we get reports, and I'll let Chris talk to this, but my understanding is that she's getting stuff late, and so she can't do her job until she gets our stuff. Chris, I don't know if you want the phone.
I would be happy to speak to that because I am waiting on council members to give me their agenda items. As I have said numerous times, the deadline is the same every month. You don't have to wait until I send out an email to submit your council items. So to say that there is a problem with the agenda being posted, it is I would say because of this lateness, this tardiness in getting the items to me by the deadline.
And I'm hearing what you have to say, but I just don't see anywhere in this paragraph where it says that if we're going, at least in number 4, it makes sense to have a reasonable mechanism built into number 4 saying, if all the counselors have their agenda items due by this time, if not the consequences are these, then the clerk or the mayor shall publish the agenda within 24 hours of receiving the agenda items at the COB. Does that make sense? So one group of people performing, and then the second group of people perform.
Could I ask Chris that? So if this were followed, where if these deadlines are missed, the issue is not going to be on the agenda. What do you think what would be your preference in terms of or expectation when you get the agenda out?
So if everyone met the deadline, or if I go with what I have received?
I think under this, if you just go with what you've received, when you'd be able to do the agenda.
So if I get everything by end of business, which to me is 5 o'clock on Thursday, then there's the turnaround. I have Friday after work to work on it. And I'm going to look at Louise because she is the one who approves the agenda. I would think Friday, Saturday would be very feasible.
I understand.
But again, it's also a direct result of when we get the agenda items.
Well, and so I have 4 days before the council meeting. So if it's Tuesday, I look at that as Monday, Sunday. Yeah. So that was more of a Friday. I guess I'm curious to know what council wants.
It could go out on Saturday.
I also don't want to.
Got it out on Saturday this time.
I also don't want to. I mean, I know people have weekend plans. Chris, Louise, you might want to do something.
Yeah, people are traveling.
Else on Saturday morning.
I know how my life is on council meetings.
I mean, it's going to speed up the process, and you've done this. You've sent me items beforehand. I star them in my email queue. It's helpful to have them ahead of time because I can start to lay out the agenda, the formatting. Having everything come at once, having everything come in late, consistently late, that is what delays the whole process.
So you're saying 4 days, so Saturday would fit? Would that fit? Saturday for sending it out would be 3 days. Reports are 3 days, okay. So we just need by 9 p.m.
Agenda by midnight, right?
I tried following that this time.
What if we just said reports and the agenda shall be provided? Well, I guess it'd be the next sentence. Are you comfortable having the agenda done in just 1 day, in 24 hours? If they're due 4 days before and you have the agenda out 3 days before, or do you want 2 days before?
So if I receive something at 5:05 after the agenda, do I have the power to say you're late?
I mean, that's kind of the intent, I think, to kick it to the next meeting. I mean, it doesn't mean it never gets to get heard. It just gets pushed to the next meeting, is my understanding of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hate to bring up football, but on game day, that's going to be tricky.
Right.
Right, Chris? Maybe. But, yeah.
The other
It's
thing,
possible.
yeah, it's possible. The other thing,
By 9 p.m.
yeah. Can we make all of these dates, these times consistent, 9 p.m., 5 p.m.? I'm not going to remember this, but I will remember one singular number. How about 9 p.m. for both? Shall be submitted at least 4 days before the council meeting at issue by 9 p.m. We all work daytime jobs, and I think it would be important to give ourselves the flexibility.
Why don't we go with 7 p.m. for everything? I mean,
Let's
9
just-
is just way too late for you to be waiting for agenda items to come in, I would think. I don't know.
Let's just make one time consistent.
So what if you had 2 days? What if we had agenda items 4 days, 3 reports 3 days, and the agenda out 2 days?
Yeah.
So I'm going to add it. I just
Can you
want
give me an example of how that would operate?
So my understanding would be if we're doing 7 p.m. for all of them,
So that'd be Wednesday or what day?
Friday everybody should have the agenda items in by 7 p.m.
Okay.
Saturday reports should be submitted by 7 p.m. Sunday the agenda should be submitted by 7 p.m.
We're not sticking with the Thursday.
Oh, we can.
I think we should stick with.
Yeah, we can.
Thursday,
so that would
Friday,
be 5
Saturday,
days,
then.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know how you count that.
Thursday, so it's going to be Thursday now?
Maybe you ought to say Thursday. I don't know. It's or in
Well,
Friday.
some meetings
maybe
won't be on a
Thursday.
Tuesday though. That's
well,
why I was just
say. But I
typically
mean the regular
Thursdays.
council meeting.
Can we do a table, Nick, where it says, you know, Thursday,
Post it on the computer.
Friday,
Yeah, I could-
Saturday, Sunday, and then
I could
Monday and
repeat it.
Tuesday? Just
I also wonder if it wouldn't be a good idea for us to try this out
Can we just try it out
I mean,
before we adopt it?
because we're clearly in violation of it already on this agenda item.
And really, that's been my goal is just to get closer to it.
Mm-hmm. I think agenda items should still be due on Thursday,
Are you
Reports
talking
Friday.
at the building or on
published
the website?
Saturday.
I don't have, I mean, I get it. I have to save
when
it
the
as a
reports come
PDF
in-
if it gets posted. But if you're talking about what you're looking at right now on the website, I can't guarantee that. That takes a long time to put together, so. Especially when things are coming in, oh, wait, that's the wrong thing. Let's replace it, so.
Need to have fairly adequate
If somebody else wants to take it on, I'd be happy to turn it over. Anybody.
I guess I wasn't covering your posting it. For me, it was just 5 days then for the agenda items, and then 3 days for reports and 3 days for the agenda. Does that make sense? So that'd be Thursdays and Saturdays. So Thursdays, the agenda items need to be submitted. Saturday by 7 p.m., you've got to get your reports done, and then if Chris is willing, she would have the agenda done. Now, I understand you were just getting this all on Saturday, so then you would have
Tuesday.
You'd have it, yeah. If you could have it posted by Tuesday, and then there also, I mean, people can also, I don't know.
Lisa, can you tell?
Around.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by if anybody else wants to do this? What does that involve? The posting the agenda made it, right? And then
You want to,
File.
thank you. If you want to compile all of the, take out from all the emails, all the little pieces of the agenda, put it in, compile it into one PDF, add all the links.
I don't have Adobe Professional to do that on my home computer, but I would be happy to do that if I can use the city's license to download it on my laptop.
Well, I guess let's think about do you think Monday, the day before, so one day for you to post it, to compile it and post it, does that sound right? I have no idea. If you get it 3 days, so 2 days to get it compiled and posted?
I've never gotten, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're wanting a partial agenda, possibly.
I'm just saying if we have to if Chris is getting everything done 3 days in advance, or getting the agenda put together 3 days in advance, everybody has a report done 3 days in advance.
Oh, hold on.
Would
a
it be
minute.
reasonable to say you have all that
Submit
compiled
it.
by 1 day in advance and post it on the website?
I don't think 1 day is enough to inform citizens.
Yeah.
I'd be more inclined to submit everything to Chris sooner.
Right.
Because
Well, you
my
also have
concern
Lori's.
is that the citizens know what we're talking about. Because I've heard time and time again that they just don't know what's going on, you
That's
know.
right.
So I think that's our obligation to get the word out.
Right. And also
I think also this is something that was fairly new. This didn't used to be done at all. You might want to keep that in mind.
if you have access to Adobe, I can help you.
About how this is
Sylvia, you
really
can't help. I mean, it's just a time-consuming process.
I can help you with a time-consuming process. I'm just offering.
One thing, if I may
I'm just
point
saying
out,
if you want to do it.
I can do it. That's what I'm saying.
one thing I do want to point out for everyone here and listening, the agenda is posted on what I call the front door and the back door after it's finalized. So the agenda is out there as people are walking. We are a walkable community. I have people who stop as I'm taping it up and start reading it. So at the very least, they have the ability to see the agenda as soon as it's finalized, as soon as I send it off. I'm usually up here posting it. That also means that I've had to change it when I've posted it because things come in late. So again, I hope we can get to a very strict guideline of when things come in late, we don't change it.
And I'd like to see an intercom or whatever system where we can communicate via
Skype.
or email or whatever, or through our cell phones, because many people cannot walk over and look at the agenda. So we need a better system of communicating, which we've been talking about for 2 years.
All right.
They could email any of us, and we could forward it to them. I mean, that's one way, too.
That's a good point. If the email addresses are all on the agenda, and if you see what report your issue's under, if you want more information right away,
I've gotten those
email
emails.
address.
Yeah. Nick, I do want to clarify that I think it's important that the reports encompass everyone. I don't think it would be fair for the individual who's putting the agenda, the council packet, to only have the counselor's information, but not city staff. So city staff needs to also provide reports. If not, their information will be treated in the same way as the counselor's information.
I would have to say staff are probably the best at sending out our reports to everybody.
I would agree with that.
I might not. And I think you also have under number 4, you have the agenda items are being submitted to the mayor, clerk, and council, and then the reports to the mayor and clerk, and we're doing the opposite now. The reports should go to everybody.
Okay, I'll change that.
And I think staff appreciates getting that also.
So
can we, yeah.
where do you want to recommend to do, you want to?
The changes I've made so far, number 2, I turned 15 to 25 and 3 minutes to 5 minutes. So that would give additional time. And then on number 4, I've changed all times to 7 p.m. We right now have agenda items 5 days in advance, reports, and then including to the council, which I just added based on that comment, 3 days in advance. And then I added a number 5 that has the clerk circulating and posting the agenda 3 days in advance.
Okay, that works. We can. that'd
So
be a
I don't
good
know if we
vote.
want to try this next month and see, or
I'd like to try it, and I'll step up and help Lisa with the PDFing, but I need
Sylvia,
assistance.
there is no helping. There's do or what is the quote from
do or do
Yoda? There is no try.
do or do not or not do. Yeah, I can do it. I just need the PDF machine, the license to do merging in PDF. So if that's doable, you have a helper.
So is there consensus to try this next month?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll circulate
Thank you for.
soon what I've updated
Okay.
to see what everyone thinks.
Okay, so we'll do a trial next month and then update the resolution for May, right? Is that what you want to do?
Sure.
Okay, and that's agreeable. Thank you. Okay, very good. Then you have the resolution 1917 to create signage and bicycle stations.
Yes. Do you want me to grab the phone so Dottie can hear me? So Dottie, I'm talking about the ordinance that you raised, or the resolution that
I can't hear you.
I'm talking about the resolution that you raised earlier in the meeting.
Yeah, right.
I really don't care who does it. I just think we need some signage. I know Virginia's talked about signage early on for the Swisher track. I'm hearing the people that I'm talking to about the ordinance related to bikes, and we can deal with scooters potentially in a separate ordinance, don't seem to have issues with the current law. They just say they're not posted, so people aren't following them.
Yeah, I think it's streets and sidewalks, so I think it's my bailiwick, so.
But I introduced this a long time ago, though. I mean, months and months ago, this idea came up, and so
It's been longer than that. It was when Virginia was on the board, and she was doing signage and things. And we redid the signage, for the football games.
So what are you saying then? Do you want to move forward with this because it's been around forever, or are you saying you want to introduce it, or you?
I want to look at it together with Troy and with Josiah, with the new changes that we're going to have on Melrose, and come up with a better solution.
We don't have any new changes coming to Melrose for at least 4 years, so I don't think that's a. Dottie, there's no changes coming to Melrose for at least 4 years. That project's now 2023. So my preference would be that somebody, I really don't care who does it,
I don't even
works with Troy in the next month to try to figure something out.
Well, as long as it's been not in the side streets and sidewalks, I believe that it is my task.
I'm fine with Dottie being the council liaison. I just want to give authority to start getting signage done. Okay. So do we want to move for consideration and then have Dottie be the liaison that we're talking about to work with?
To wait until we have a new chief to go over some of this.
This is just giving
This is so
authority
general.
to
I
just
mean,
make some signs pursuant to Iowa law. I think that the council member, I think Dottie would come back to the council with, hey, these are the signs. She would look at, the ordinance that we currently have, Section 8, dealing with bicycles, and other signage, and say these are the signs we think we need in town, and this gives authority for them to get going on it.
Yeah, this language is very general. I don't think there's anything here that we need to wait another month on.
The only thing that we would,
Bicycle stations, have we
For
talked
that,
about
is
bicycle
it straight
stations at
now?
all?
the only thing you want to concern yourself with would be the only advantage to waiting is to fill in an appropriation of this resolution, bundle it up, get the research done.
Okay.
So right now, Virginia, Lisa, and Nick are discussing whether to adopt the resolution at this time or wait.
It isn't appropriate. I have streets and sidewalks.
I understand that, Dottie. So apart from what you're talking about, just as a third-party observer who's dropping into the conversation, I think the only upside for waiting another month is for you to get quotes and turn this resolution actionable, not just fuzzy language of let's try to do this. I'm like, come back, tell us how much is it going to cost, when is it going to be ordered, and we approve everything. 30 days to get it done. Troy will certainly be here well before then, and assisting you for any signage would also be, who does signage? Josiah. So this needs to be done in 30 calendar days is the only limitation around the idea. From a finance perspective, and everybody should care about finance. How are we going to finance these whatever signages? So let's find out what it would cost and order everything. Just put it down in one resolution.
Well, I would just ask then for consensus that this is actually going to get done. Because, again, it's been dragging on forever. I continue to hear complaints about signage, lack of signage. It just needs to get done. I don't care who does it.
And the other thing that we need to worry about is we just went through a round of cleaning up the city with excessive signages. We did a decluttering of signages. I think it's really important that we talk to Josiah and revisit whatever routes they cleaned up and make sure that we're not adding any more
We need to
signages.
look at the city as an entity.
I don't
and
need to spend more
decide
time debating this.
what we need to do. Now, I've been given streets and sidewalks. So if you want the streets and sidewalks done, I'll do them.
Dottie, I'm
Otherwise,
fine.
You can assign me to something else.
Dowdy, I'm fine as long as it gets done. I'm saying I don't care who does it. It just this is drug on, and I continue to hear complaints about bikes doing things that are inconsistent with the law, that sort of thing. So I think that'd be great if you would work on it over the next month. To me, that sounds great. It sounds like there's consensus for you to get going on it. Hopefully, what I've put together, helps you, but at least it sounds like we're going to get it going. So that's good.
So I'm still
Sound good?
asking about the bicycle station, sorry.
What is a bicycle station is
Oh,
what I want to know.
that's something that was, yeah. So if you want, this would be another part of it to give authority to have, bicycle stations are little repair things.
Oh,
People can put
okay.
their bike up and pump tires up. It's just, I think, consistent with being bicycle friendly community.
Great idea.
Can you double it up and make sure that it also works for cars? I know my cars sometimes are low on air.
No.
So
They
where
usually-
will they be, and how much do they cost?
Well, Dottie,
So Dottie-
yeah, we can, yeah, if we want to be specific, the way that,
downtown, they're just right on the sidewalk next to the
Yeah.
bike rack.
So you're going to
Pretty cool.
delay this resolution?
sounds like Dottie is going to take it up and,
About having pumping stations for bike tires,
That's part of it,
part
Dottie.
of it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to.
Yeah.
You can.
Maybe right out here.
You can
We
bring
can
it
look
up
at
with
the
your
budget
meeting
sheets
with
over
Josiah and Troy next month, okay? Same resolution and what you've decided
good idea.
about it, okay?
In the past, we've had a lot of difficulty with the bikesters to clamp down on anything. So it's going to take a real community commitment to ride herd on the bikers.
the other thing, Dottie, Dottie, if you're taking this over, the other thing that I've been trying to get consensus on is whether we're going to ban e-scooters in town. That's how this discussion,
We're going to be what? I can't hear it.
banning e-scooters.
Yes. Well, so many of the students are riding them, and many of the students live in Grandview.
Well,
So therein lies an issue.
I don't know. That was what Art had brought up, I don't know, January maybe, that people were zipping by him, and so that is part of the conversation, and I think you at the time were going to look at that too. So I would just ask that you guys look at that and bring an ordinance forward to see if there's or see if there's consensus on that. Aside from that, on my report, I want to bring out I do think that looking at smoking and vaping limitations on public lands is something we should look at. I would like to. I haven't heard any. I've had that in my report, I think, a couple times. I'd like to hear feedback if anybody has strong feelings about it. That's all I have.
Just from a pure safety perspective, from a pure safety for the forest, any smoking should be an obvious risk that we need to, under good public policy, just take care of and say no. The vaping, on the other hand, is more contained. It's more machine operated. And I have more of a concern that is encumbering a freedom of usage for our residents and members of the public. And I think it's well outside of our purview.
Sylvia's talking about vaping.
Not
Smoking.
That's all right, we're moving on.
So that's my feedback. Any other feedback from the council?
I saw Virginia shaking her head yes. I saw that as feedback.
Shaking my head, yeah.
Uh, So I think that's a
Oh, for
Consensus.
consensus. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And you're going to go ahead and forward that information to the Dorothy Maher email plus Troy and Josiah.
Okay.
That information. I think that'll help all of them. Thank you, Nick. We're going to go on to Johnson County Refuse is here tonight. And so we're going to go to Virginia's report for consideration of this resolution 1918 to attest to agreement with Johnson County Refuse for refuse recycling and yard waste collection services. You had circulated that.
We circulated a couple copies this weekend as people suggested some changes. We clarified a couple of things that, like lids, when the garbage can's put out for collection, the lid needs to be closed. Anything above the lid line needs to have a sticker if it's going to be picked up. Then we clarified that the current stickers that are $1.25 each are going to be phased out completely. Those won't be, you can't use them anymore after July 1st. So you can either put 3 of them to substitute for one of the $3 stickers, or you can return them to Steve and Johnson County Refuse for a refund, which is nice. And that $3 sticker is good for twice the size bag as previous, so it's not as big of a price increase on that as it looks. The $3 price on stickers is guaranteed for 10 years, just like the $18.50 per house is guaranteed for 10 years. And I can't think of any other changes that were made over the weekend. So I motion adoption resolution 1918.
Second.
I'd like to.
Motion by Virginia, second by Nick. Discussion.
Can I please have the Dottie phone?
Thanks for remembering.
I'm gonna want Miles for my phone after this meeting.
All right, my public comment with respect to the adoption of the new refuse recycling and yard waste collection is I would like to see incorporation of the resolution in its entirety into the contract. Right now, the resolution is outside of that contract, and I'd like to see it adopted as part of a TNC of the agreement. So, Steve, that I don't see a legal barrier to that. I don't see any conflicts created with that.
So what do you want? And what do you want? Because I can't hear it.
Basically, what I want is the resolution 18-18 incorporated into the terms of the 10-year contract.
But I don't have that information here because I don't have access to the agenda. So what is the resolution you want incorporated?
It's the resolution authorizing council to enter into this agreement. And all I'm asking is that the resolution become a term and condition of the contract.
Is there something in the resolution that's not in the contract?
And then what are the
That's why I told you, I just want to see the resolution adopted as a contractual provision.
Can you provide any basis for that?
What's incorporated that we can rescind it if certain conditions don't occur? What does that say? So, what authority do we have to withdraw if X things are not performed?
So you have the authority to rescind it upon notice of non-performance and failure to cure. So if Johnson County Refuse doesn't do what it says it would do, it will do under the contract, the city has to give Johnson County Refuse notice. If Johnson County doesn't cure the defect, then you can.
So I'm suggesting that the resolution is a healthy attachment to include.
I think I'm fine with that. I'm
to the
just wondering,
contract.
can you give a single reason as to why?
I just think it's a good practice, good housekeeping.
But I guess my point, I'll do whatever the council wants, but I think all the terms in the resolution, to the extent they are terms, are in the contract.
I mean, I literally can't see a single word that's not
Steve,
covered.
I want to protect the city, and I'd like to see the resolution adopted as part of the contract.
All right. I'm not doing extra stuff unless you can provide some legitimate reason.
That is a legitimate reason, protecting our community. That's all.
How?
It's a contract. It's a written agreement.
What does it do?
That's it.
How does that affect the second one?
Well, I object to the term, the 10-year term.
Great. All right. Let's vote.
Dottie, the term isn't too bad. It's a good term because it's 1850, but without the resolution, the contract allows the other party to amend, change the agreement of 18.5. The resolution does not. The resolution holds it steady for 10 years,
There's
and that's why I want it
Thank you
in.
for clarifying.
That's what I want in the contract.
But I don't.
Certainly you want it
Is that true, Steve? I mean, it's very
into
clearly
a
in there.
10-year agreement. But my point is, a 10-year agreement would be a mortgage on a house.
I agree with you.
Of that sort. And it is too long, too long.
I agree with you, and I don't
So your
like.
concern is that Steve can raise the price on us.
And I
in the
don't like the
contract, but
automatic
that-
renewal either. I think it should require competitive bidding after 10 years to see where we're at. But if the council wants to work with that, I'm willing to.
Council can figure that out.
Willing to work. So Steve, so council, I'd like a show of hands. If you want my vote to be a 5-0 or 4-1 on this, I would need to see this resolution incorporated into the
I disagree
agreement.
with your reasoning, Steve. Can you see any reason why the price is not guaranteed in the contract?
It's not. There's no carve out. No carve out from any changes or amendments, Virginia.
Yeah, it's a term of the contract for 10 years. It's $18.50. There's a catch-all phrase that says if the city and the contractor want to make changes, what it says is no changes can be made unless the city and the contractor agree in writing.
That's right.
So
put it in there.
It's already in there.
It is.
No,
in there.
I want the resolution in the contract.
Of course. No deal otherwise.
That's right.
But I object to the term.
I don't like the term either. It's an unusual term, but it's generous in a way. I did do my own independent research, Dottie, and Iowa City has.
We're over our 5
I
minutes.
think $19 for all these services, so we're not too far off in terms of benchmarking.
Well, except we are a small village, and so we are way off. And I believe they're using us.
Right, because of the economies of scale, we should be paying a lot more.
So, so there's a motion and a second for 1918.
And I'd like to see
There's
the
already
addition.
a motion on the floor.
Right, and discussion. So my discussion point is, I'd like to see adoption of Resolution 19-18 as part of any term into the contract body. Because I disagree with Steve Ballard that the resolution is part of the contract. It's not.
I didn't say it was. I said the terms, the language of the resolution, the terms of the resolution, if you want to call them terms, those are all part of the contract.
Yep, and I'm not satisfied that the contract best reflects our position that we're trying to accomplish, as does the resolution. And instead of reinventing language, I'm just saying, hey, can you please pick up the resolution in the body of the contract? That's all.
So is there a second on that motion?
Yeah.
But we can't.
No, is there a second on the motion to amend? I think there's a motion to amend.
Dottie, can you second that motion?
Resolution to be included in the contract.
Which motion?
Now we have just a first.
To include the resolution 8.
Oh, okay.
Let's just vote on the motion.
Yes, you said you have a second. Do you have a proper motion?
I didn't hear it.
Dottie, Chris Anderson needs to hear your second motion supporting the adoption of the resolution as a term in the contract.
Okay, so we're going to vote on that first.
Yeah.
So she said.
Dottie, can you give me a second on that, please?
Oh, I did. I second it.
Okay, you have a proper motion.
So council knows now what we're voting on. Do you want?
We're
Chris
voting
to
on a
read it?
motion to amend to put the wording in the resolution into the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. It's
Well, we aren't doing the roll call on this.
yeah. It's all in favor. Say aye.
Aye. Are you in favor, Dottie, or not?
Of our amendment?
Yeah, it's to include.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Opposed? Say no.
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 Did you vote, Virginia?
I did vote. I voted no.
Okay. So it doesn't carry.
Doesn't carry, so the
So now we
contract
have-
is pretty naked.
Sylvia,
So I-
number 5,
Did they
term.
agree or
It's in the contract. I don't know why. you can't
Virginia,
see
look at
what
the
Steve is
look at
All right,
telling
so I
you.
think
the
we already
amending
voted on
section.
that. I would like to move
The
on.
amending section of the contract.
Consideration of 1918 now.
All right, so I would just like to speak in favor of this. I think Virginia did a great job looking at other options. I think this is by far the best option. You know, talking to people in the community, I'm excited for Dottie. Okay, Dottie doesn't like the term. I understand that. But I think this is a great thing for the community. Talking to people in the community, I think there's a lot of excitement to get away from the small recycling containers, especially. And so I'm ready to vote.
Is there any other discussion? Okay.
Yeah, I'm concerned that under this contract, the service provider can come back and still amend and change, despite the fact that it says that rates are set for 10 years at 18.5. They can come back and say, you know what, we've experienced a dramatic increase in recycling because India and China are no longer buying our recyclables, and
if he can
Scott
convince
County,
council
whatever.
at that time,
but you're admitting that the change could take place, whereas this resolution
only with the consensus of council.
and however, you're carving out that he can't do that either way. If you were to allow that resolution to get incorporated into the body, that would be a breach of one of his conditions. To deliver services for 10 years at 18.5. That's the advantage of 10 years, right?
So
otherwise, you're removing a protection in this agreement, and I completely disagree.
I don't agree with your reasoning here.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think you just...
We're ready for a roll call vote. Roll call.
Moore.
Aye.
Dottie, we're voting on the motion for the contract.
Oh, under no circumstance.
Okay, that's a no. Herbold.
Aye.
Casada.
No.
Miller.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, then we have consideration of Resolution 1919, and this is 2080 agreement between the City of University Heights and the City of Iowa City regarding billing for refuse and recycling services. I spoke about it in my mayor's report, and it's the same terms as last month. It's for the billing services to be included in your water bill.
And does that mean that we're going to be charged $222 at the end of the year?
It's monthly, broken up monthly, right?
No, but total would be, Iowa City would be collecting.
It's monthly, right? It's monthly. I believe it's monthly, and the $2,500 is the initial fee
Right.
within 30 days.
Right, but at the end of the year, Iowa City will have a record for every resident picking up $222 because it's $18.50 that will be added to our utility bills.
No, that's the entire cost. The city pays for recycling, so that's right.
You're still collecting taxes, right? Okay.
And then it's just, okay. So,
Motion adoption 1919.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Virginia, second by Nick. Roll call vote.
Sorry, I'm still writing Nick down.
Sorry.
Sorry. Where was I? Dottie, we're voting on Iowa City charging us in our monthly bills. Are you in favor or against?
What has it been?
Okay, let me pass the phone.
Well-
I'll explain. Dottie,
We had
Dottie,
sticker
this is a secondary motion to the one you just voted against, and it's to collect dollars to pay for some of the utility bills. So now your garbage collection fee will be included in your utility billing on a 10-year contract. So the question is,
After we've agreed to pay him as well?
yeah.
Oh, that's absurd.
Okay, so I guess that's a no.
Okay, she said no. So continue.
Herbold.
Aye.
Casada.
No.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay. Then we have consideration of Resolution 1920 permitting the University Heights Tree Board to review plans and make recommendations related to the Swisher Tract. And Virginia circulated that.
Thank you, Louise. We have a couple of new people on the tree board, including a person who works for Trees Forever and someone who's on the Burr Oak Land Trust Board of Directors. And they met last week and requested that they be allowed to make recommendations in regards to steps that council would take on a Swisher. Those recommendations would not be binding. This isn't like a zoning commission thing where it would take a supermajority to override their recommendations. They just want to be involved, and they're well qualified to be involved. So I think we should take them up on it.
I think this is a great idea because of the continuity that it can provide and the expertise that we're able to get from the tree board. So I like formalizing this the way you have. I appreciate that.
You are contemplating the tree board making recommendations regarding the Swisher Tract to the council.
There hasn't been a motion
So
yet.
motion adoption 1920.
Second.
Okay, motion by Virginia, second by Nick. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Casada.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Maher. We're voting.
Abstaining.
Okay, carried.
Okay, then we have third consideration of ordinance 236, amending the rental housing code regarding the definition of owner occupied.
I motion adoption.
Okay, motion by Sylvia. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Virginia. Any discussion?
We're now on ordinance, what are we on?
236.
236 regarding the rental housing change,
Owner occupied.
owner occupied change.
Roll call vote.
Casada.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Maher.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, and then you talked about mowing bid that you had.
Yeah, when we collected bids from professional companies that do lawn mowing for a couple of public areas in town, the lowest bid we got was $1,500. A resident has offered to do it for $1,400 for this season, which is going to pretty much be starting any day now. My grass needs to be mowed. Sorry.
Can you put the
So
phone
I
next
would-
to you so that we can get her?
I would propose that we accept this bid from a resident. It's a teenager in town. He'll be well supervised.
Do we have an
Okay,
indemnification?
That's a motion?
pro-
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Is that a motion?
That
That's
was
a motion.
right?
Yep. I'd like to accept this
Is
bid
there
for
a second?
mowing.
I'll second.
Second by Sylvia.
I just want discussion around indemnification. Workers' comp comes to mind, and possible any injuries. So how is that being handled? I think it needs to be treated just like any other
Steve, let's talk
service
about that
provider.
in the next week or so, yeah. Okay.
It's
The motion is to hire. Okay. And
Not hiring anybody.
we had a, we talked about in the past about
engaging.
for public areas in the city, Triangle Park, around, where they are. And the lowest bid we got was 1,500 from contractors. And Virginia found a resident who will do it for $1,400. And so the motion is to accept that bid. And Sylvia's,
I would have to see what kind of insurance they have, because for $100, I wouldn't put the city at risk.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I would
point
never
on
do
that.
it without any protections.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a company, they're licensed and they're insured. So I would only vote for a company doing it. $100 isn't worth the chance,
Steve, is that a concern for you?
and that's a business decision.
I don't think it's a liability risk for the city.
Why not?
Because I don't think it's the city's action. I mean, as an independent
It's
contractor,
an agent of ours.
I don't know about that from the standpoint of liability. I don't.
I'd rather be on the safe side.
Then you should be.
Yeah. So I'd like to see an indemnification agreement and independent contractor status. Obviously, this will get reported like any other warrant that we have, but I think we need to be careful to not set precedent just because we have a resident
I can't
involved.
hear anything again.
Well, she agrees with you. Sylvia agrees with you that
Yeah,
it's a
lawyer's,
liability.
it's absolutely clear from a legal perspective.
Steve Ballard, I'll
Ste-
let you tell her what you said.
Yeah, well, so I don't know that the city paying somebody to mow, that person becomes that the city's going to become vicariously liable for that person. If the council wants,
Well, if you aren't insured, you put yourself at risk, because a professional company is insured and licensed to function. So if anything happened, it would not be our issue.
yeah.
And with
Well,
a citizen,
I don't
you have a
agree with that.
different
It's the
issue.
city's issue. If somebody makes it the city's issue, if there's insurance, then there's insurance. And if you want to require that, then I think you should require it.
I think we can't be sloppy. We just need to be protected, and that's it. It's for the good of the resident who wants to do it, and it's good for the rest of the city as well and the community. Gets the job done. Let's get the paperwork done.
So Sylvia's again agreeing with you about the liability issue.
No shortcuts.
There is
yeah.
Let's vote on the motion.
There is a consideration. There is a motion on the table. Does council want to vote?
Yes.
Continue. So this is accept bid for mowing public areas in the city from a resident. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Something that I think
Opposed, say no, Dottie. Say no, because you want to say no, right?
I'm not going to support it.
I'm going to abstain until I get assurances that we have.
I'll follow up with Steve this week.
Thank you. Okay, that's the case, Virginia. If there's a commitment from you to do that, then, and produce the necessary documentation, absolutely, I'll support it.
Last thing
That's
is an
not in the
announcement. Sorry?
The motion passed, 3-.
Yeah, the motion passed. It's not part
But
of
I
the
will
motion.
follow up with Steve.
Yeah, she said she's following up.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. You're
follow
gonna
up with Steve.
Up with Steve. Okay.
I don't know what the
we'll
outcome's
go
going to be.
to finance and.
I'm sorry, one announcement, Community Cleanup Day is April 27th from 9 to 11:30 over on Marietta. Is there a consensus that the scrap metal is a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll get that back.
We'll always get money from it, too.
Thank you. Okay, so Sylvia, do you want to go with your report?
Yeah,
Oh,
just.
hand the phone. Oh, you did.
Perfect. Okay, it is now 9:13. I'm conscientious of time. I've been tracking all of us.
You have Resolution 1908.
Yeah, 1908, that was circulated on Sunday at 6 p.m. And it's about the farmer's market. There were 2 outstanding issues to be supplemented at this meeting, and they involve what the income was generated for the last farmer's market, and that was $227.50. And we spent $80 on enticing hot food vendors to show up to University Heights. We only had 2 takers. I went over my emails, and one of them involved a blast over to Iowa City, who circulated a request for hot food vendors. And we still ended up with just 2 taking us up on an offer for this. So that's $80 for expenses and $227.50 in income. The next outstanding item was how many vendors are interested from the core group. I was able to connect with 80% of them, and we've got farmers, we've got eggs, we've got bakers, and we have 1 hot food vendor who is interested in doing a biweekly schedule, and we have a potential ice cream vendor who is starting an artisan ice cream business that is interested. So that's about it. And I have been getting far many more questions about when the paperwork is going to be posted on the city website. And there's this presumption in the public that we're going to have something. So I just wanted to bring that information to the table. So the resolution is pretty much the same that it was last time. Actually, no, because we ended up with a repeat with the same title. So you have the resolution before you. Is there a second or to open discussion?
I'll second to open discussion.
Okay.
I have a comment that I think is pretty significant. I've had some discussion with some of the residents of Grandview, and they said the times that we went to the market were the times when there was a hot food vendor. And so I think that unless we can ensure that we have a truck or a vendor or something with hot food weekly, it is. I think we are at risk for not really functioning maximally. And some of the members of the condominium development, expressed to me too that they were going when there was hot bread available. The bread gal from Iowa City Market, and after she stopped, they didn't go anymore. So I think it's important to listen to the citizens and see really what they want, because I know the students want a food truck.
And I don't disagree with that. All I can tell you is that I think it's really important for this council to consider that this incoming farmers market has 0 tax dollars supporting it. The police cultural events are at $1,200 or $1,500, And the Cultural Commission is at 500, and I do want to remind this council that all city events in this council have involved free food. There was free food at the bonfires. There was hot dogs and s'mores. That attracted about 50 people. And then there was the Fall Festival with the games on Paul's lot. There was free Maggie's pizza. So, of course, that attracted people. So I'd like to see some of these other events possibly also have a day where they're doing a grill out, maybe the, grill with the cops, and see if they can't do concurrent events so that the farmers market can leverage that as a hot food vendor service. Also, I do want to remind you that the Fall Festival, I think the mayor was ready to hire the mac and cheese cart at the Iowa City downtown pedestrian mall for mac and cheese. I think that was going to be free as well. I don't, or was that going to be available for sale? So
Was it that you were confused? I wasn't using that vendor. I was.
Okay, so, but a vendor, right? But the point is that all of these community events are receiving free food, hot food vendor support. And I think that is a very different story with the farmers market. I don't charge admission, and neither does the city. So people are just coming and going. And we have a sizable amount of a really good core group of vendors that a future council can really make a go with in a different direction once more funding from the hotel becomes available. As you recall, I mentioned at the last council meeting, Grand Oaknell residents would like to see the city move the Tuesday farmers market over to another day because it competes with a concert night that they have, and they really do enjoy coming out to the farmers market. So there's a number of good reasons why this should not be why this should continue for this year, giving ample time for next year to move in a different direction. So I'm asking for a vote on this so that people can get a text tonight and say, yeah, it's a go. Thank you for, getting ready for the season. And the resolution is very plain. It says only June, July, and August. I think we've explored at least 2 years where we've tried pushing the farmers market into September, and it's just not viable once school starts. And it's not, I can't afford to be doing that anymore. It's taking up too much of my vacation time in order to accomplish that. And we just don't have on-site staff to help us with this. It's all run on a volunteer basis.
Point of reference, if I may, the event that was held on Paul Moore's land was not a city-sponsored event. That was sponsored by the University Heights Community Fund, of which I am a member. So I want to make that perfectly clear that there were no tax dollars. That was the result of donations. And yes, we did have food, but it was not a city-sponsored event.
Thank you for clarifying. So that's it. So it's resolution 19.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Just a little bit more discussion. I guess I'm on the fence about this. If it's not costing the city any money, and if Sylvia wants to head it up, and I guess I don't see the big problem. I just, in a sense, feel bad. I know there was, with the inconsistency, I tried last year, and I talked to the Marco's owner, and they were nice to come over, and we try to get over there quite a bit to use them. I do get concerned that it's something where people maybe kind of rely on it, go over, then there's no hot food vendors, and it's kind of like, they'd relied on it and have to turn around. Yeah. But I'm tempted to support it, because it doesn't involve any, I guess, direct dollars. It's just reserving, taking up the parking spots over there, and I don't know, maybe it will lead to something.
It doesn't interfere with traffic. That was my concern too, the parking on Marietta there. But if they can move through, the traffic is free to move.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you want to pass? I don't know if you guys have anything.
Okay.
I think that I agree with Nick, Sylvia. I think that you really need to work harder on getting a food truck there. And I think you could sell it to them if you pointed out the numbers of persons at Grandview, how they could be relying on it if we were certain that we were going to have a truck. So I think you really need to try to get a hot food vendor.
Well, they had one, and I don't think there was enough
Every
business to
week.
keep
Every
them
week.
in. This,
Every
you're
week.
paying, you're subsidizing someone to come to do that. Are you going to do that every week now? Because I don't think you're going to have the money to do that.
Well, I don't think there's any money this year,
Yeah,
is my
there's zero.
understanding.
Yeah.
What, Sylvia?
So, how are
It's
you gonna
Lisa
do
who's
that?
speaking.
The question was if we were going to subsidize a hot food truck every week.
Oh, we aren't subsidizing it at all.
We did in the past, Dottie.
That was done in the past.
Just twice.
Well, I don't care about the past. I'm talking about the future. I don't think it was that it was marketed with the Grandview population in mind. I think a food truck would be more eager if they could see how many people would be buying if we advertised that. I think that we would more easily be able to get a hot food vendor. That's my input.
Any other discussion? Ready to vote? Roll call vote.
Casada.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore.
Jeez. Aye.
Maher. We're voting on the farmer's market.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, I think you can, the consideration of 1921, we can omit that, right, Sylvia?
And perhaps you could spell my name right on the two resolutions.
I mean, you want to use the $250,000 for Olive Court project, and we're not having one.
Right. Well, let's just at least put it on the table for, let's try out, what is it, 15 minutes of discussion or less. I think the resolution, Chris, can you help me put the resolution up there?
Give me a second. I assumed we would not be discussing it since it's not needed.
Oh, there it is. I found it.
So what were we talking about?
Is there any way you can minimize it so that we can see some of it in its entirety? Mm-hmm. Okay, a little. No, not that much.
I am resizing the resolution on the screen so that
Okay.
Sylvia can see it.
All right. We need to talk about this resolution anyway, despite the fact that we are not taking any bids for the Olive Court dollars. And that is, right now, $250,000 are sitting in the money market account, and it's earning, I think, 2% at Midwest One Bank. And because we're not using it for the Olive Court, I don't know what this council is going to do in terms of majority direction. And that's probably what we need to talk about, because it impacts the investment of where this money is going to go. So we might as well use this agenda item to discuss what are we going to do. When I looked at the numbers for the Olive Court construction, I'm hopeful that the next time that that the city engineer takes up this issue, we're going to be closer to what he estimated, which is $583,000, right? Once you think about that, we still have to figure out the Lithium Development and Iowa City at minimum will be $116,000, $400,000, leaving us with a balance of a funding gap of 400. Chris, can you tell us a little bit? Can you zoom in so I can see those numbers? But there's a finance gap that we 466,000. That's a sizable amount of money that we need to come up with. If we use and apply the 250,000, we have to, a total of city finance would involve 216,000. So my point is, you know, this is money that originates from the two houses that were sold, that were brought into the city by the 2017 council on Olive Court with the Marriott Hotel. And this council decided in 2018 to bid them and sell them off for $250,000. And they're in Olive Court. And the thing is, what are we going to do with that money? And I think it's important for us to keep in mind how much it's going to cost to redo the Olive Court project. Right now, we know that the Olive Court project was was 30% over. Who knows? Maybe it'll be 30% over again, even with more bidders coming on board. So I'm concerned that we need to think of where this money needs to be going in terms of allotment, because right now the city budget reflects $250,000 being used to finance the Olive Court project. And even if you use $250,000, you still have another gap, that $216,000. And it's not going to get any prettier. I think the cost of supplies and concrete are going to increase next year. So we've got to adjust for basic inflation that's going to happen on a project like this. So I'd like
just
to
wanna
hear some
suggest
preliminary
that
comments.
This is going to be a 2020 council decision.
In the meantime, let's put that money where it
well,
should be, because I just want to
saying
point
they can
out,
reverse it.
I just want to point out
And
that
so I want to point out that you're going to make a decision. You want a decision today and you're trying to tie a 2020 council, which will be a new council like the 2017.
we only have until January, Louise, in order before the money market drops
It'll be
the
January
2%.
when the decision will be
So-
made about financing.
So,
January.
right. And in the meantime, let's also remember
be a
the
new
prior councils who were prudent enough and careful enough with taxpayer money. And that's how we were able to purchase the,
250,000
right. So that's why we were able to buy the Swisher track.
wholesale proceeds, applying it to next year's Olive Court project.
So I'm suggesting we put this money in a CD. Can I please have the phone so Dottie can hear this? We take it out. I suggest that this money, the $250,000, be taken out on a CD that spans long enough until about the projected first payments that need to be made on this project. And I think Josiah had explained to me that if we had successfully received a bid, we would have had to have made our first payment on or about April, May, sometime in June or July. So my point is, let's take this and invest this money out enough or further out enough until a payment is due. So it would be a short term. It would be a short term investment. Otherwise, we're going to lose something in January. And April 2020? Okay. Oh, okay. Thanks for that detail. Okay. So with that in mind, I think we need to see if we can do better than 2.0 in the meantime.
What? I don't have a problem with using the 250 on Olive Court. I just don't understand why we just had a special meeting to figure out what to do with this money, and now we're...
Because it had been suggested that it should be used for something else. So I have no idea what this majority council is contemplating with 250.
I also don't have a problem with just not spending it.
All right. So if there are no further comments, then I think this resolution just gets withdrawn due to our circumstances have changed. No, it's just circumstances have changed. The next item is discussion on the 2019 football game day and public right-of-way repairs. That was in anticipation to repairs being made on Olive Court and what this council direction should be when we have brand new city infrastructure and we have new trees, new grass, etc. And we are allowing property owners to allow their guests to jump the curb and go onto their lawns in order for them to participate in game day. I think that there is a reasonable ask from the rest of the community who doesn't do game day, that if there's any damage to improvements that are made by the city on account of this type of activity, that those property owners who do football game day parking be responsible for restoring the public city infrastructure. So if you're putting brand new grass, new sidewalk and curbs, and those get damaged in the course of a football game day season, I don't think it's unreasonable for the city engineer to send a letter saying, please repair. If not, we need to figure out what the game plan is to have
Is
those
there
property
interest to
owners
put
pick up.
this on a future agenda?
But I think we need to talk about it before it becomes a bigger problem.
Are you singling out Olive Court?
In the context, yes, but now I can see broader application. I mean, there are some curbs that are not in disrepair, and I'm worried once they do get in disrepair, it just makes the neighborhood look really unrepaired and unmaintained.
We have lots of yards that have ruts and whatever, and I think
I'd recommend that we put this on the agenda for May.
For May?
I didn't know what, I
what
didn't
it
see a
was.
report of exactly what this was, and I didn't know what that meant. But I also think that we need to start discussing football game day.
Right.
With our new chief
Mhm.
and those kind of things, and kind of review what council sees. So why don't we defer that
Okay.
to May?
All right.
The May meeting. And then
And then the last comment for finance, I'm asking, Steve Cool alerted council and staff that the budget season for this year is about to close, and we need to make sure that we're on target. So I'm asking that all of you review the departments that you work with, and that you generate bills through, and ensure that those departments are within their budget. And if they're not, please be ready to provide an explanation for why we need to make adjustments at the next council meeting. We have to file sometime in May. I'm not sure precisely the date, but I really do need your participation to make sure that your departments, or those that you informally have a lot of work to do through, are managing and meeting their budget.
any questions about that? Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. We'll go to e-government. Lisa, you circulated your report. Are there any questions for Lisa?
Lisa, is there any possibility that we can figure out how to use Skype for remote meetings so that people can be visually present remotely?
if we had an IT person, maybe.
So you're suggesting maybe you could hire someone? Oh, Dottie's texting me. She's still on the phone?
I don't know.
I was cut off 10 minutes ago.
Was this your
Is what she's saying.
No, that's Sylvia's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I should
Just tell
try
her.
calling her on my phone.
I think she's calling everybody.
I was cut off 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Hi, Dottie.
Yes.
Sylvia was asking about, under e-government, about if we could use Skype. But we need an IT person, or maybe we could even ask Steve about it.
Maybe so.
Isn't there some way
Steve Anderson.
clear this up so that we can communicate?
Can we see Dottie
You
using
know,
Skype?
it's ridiculous to try to call in and
can.
try to be heard.
Okay.
Is someone going to follow up on that? Are you?
I can look into it.
Chris Anderson's going to look into it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything
So,
else?
are we still in meeting or are we
Yeah, we're
done?
just about done. Are there any announcements? Is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned by unanimous consent. Okay, we're done, Dottie.
Okay.
Thank you.